Well, good afternoon, America, and welcome back to the Rhine Report. I've just remembered to put my microphone a little bit closer. There's breaking news all over the place on the various litigations, and it's absolutely crazy. In one case, which is the case of Mr. Garcia, the federal judge has declared that the administration is going to have to share under oath how it's trying to get Garcia back to the U.S. This is now ongoing. I know she set a hearing for 2 weeks' time for discovery in this matter, and I'm going to discuss that at some point. And I'll read from the Guardian's article by Hugo Lowell, who's a very reliable reporter. A federal judge sharply rebuked the Trump administration and scolded officials on Tuesday for taking no steps to secure the return of a man wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador, as the Supreme Court had ordered in a contentious ruling last week. Now, in the Garcia case, in light of A, the SCOTUS per curiam decision, B, the granting in that of the order for return of Garcia, and C, the public stance from its press conference refusing compliance, and D, the hearing of Judge Xinis. That's how it's pronounced. I finally found out from lawfare. Following the presser, who scheduled a further hearing for 2 weeks' time that will include depositions and discovery. In light of all of that, what comes next in that case? Contempt, which she may very well use as a tool in her case, is still a sidebar issue and doesn't necessarily take us forward, but it might be appealable. I don't know either way. But it is my view that the plaintiffs need an appealable order from which they can either appeal or defend, depending on the circumstances, on an emergency basis directly to the Supreme Court. We must bypass the interim courts, the Court of Appeals, etc., because that could go on forever. The concern is the timeline itself, as each day causes more and more irreparable harm to Mr. Garcia. Now, I get it that the judge feels she needs to build a record on the issues of noncompliance, but she already has the evidence of the U.S. statements made in the press conference, televised nationally, with Trump and Bukele, which is, in my view, more than enough to justify an order that might be appealable. An emergency application might then go directly to the Supreme Court, from which SCOTUS will be forced to virtually shit or get off the pot, defend the Constitution and the judicial system, or capitulate to the present fascist government that they previously assisted in creating. They must address and refuse to accept the government's rather specious, mendacious arguments and order the following. First, a declaration 1. This case does not properly fall under foreign policy considerations or issues of national security, and the claims from the government about gang members and a foreign terrorist organization designation is deceitful, disingenuous, and without merit, solely based on conclusory allegations not supported by facts, evidence, or proofs. 2. Replace the word facilitate with effectuate and end this nonsense that I'm sure Roberts inserted deliberately in a new order to the government to achieve the return of Garcia. 3. Make a finding that the removal of Garcia and others from the U.S. to a foreign jurisdiction and foreign prison is, in my view, except for D, which I'd neglected to insert here, clearly the evidence, the record, and judgment below indicates that the U.S. government has entered into an illicit scheme with a foreign government to imprison persons it wanted removed, and our court, and that means our courts, including the Supreme Court, cannot extend its jurisdiction beyond territorial limits. The government must seek the returns involved in the instant case and others similarly situated. And now finally we can get to the other case. God, this is getting busy. So, in the Boasberg case, he imposed a temporary restraining order originally, barring deportations that evening. But the planes still arrived in El Salvador. The Justice Department argued that Boasberg had overstepped his authority by inserting himself into questions of foreign policy. And I've already discussed that and can discuss it maybe in another podcast, but it's a complete and absolute nonsense. Boasberg wasn't convinced. I don't know who would be if they were in their right minds. He said that while he issued the order temporarily pausing the flight, quote, those individuals were on planes being flown overseas, having been spirited out of the United States by the government before they could vindicate their due process rights by contesting their removability in a federal court as the law requires. And he goes on to say, the court ultimately determines that the government's actions on that day demonstrate a willful disregard for its order, sufficient for the court to conclude that probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt, not civil contempt. The court does not reach such conclusion lightly or hastily. Indeed, it has given defendants ample opportunity to rectify or explain their actions. None of their responses has been satisfactory. So now there's where we stand with that case. Now, if he refers this based on probable cause for the Justice Department to prosecute those people responsible for the removal of the Venezuelans, well, what's going to happen? Pam Bondi's going to refuse. They own the Justice Department. It's the Ministry of Justice now in this made-up kingdom. But I understand from a few reliable sources that it may be possible for the judge, or that the judge has the power and authority to appoint his own criminal counsel. And this we'll have to, kind of wait and see on, and see if we can explore the possibilities there. But these are some of the issues and complications of today, and they're frightening. And there are still people still saying we're not quite in a constitutional crisis. Well, my God, that passed months ago. We're now in the throes of a coup which is ongoing. We're living under a dictatorship with power, control, and authority vested in one man who's a front man for fanatics sitting back in the shadows, pulling his strings and allowing him to exercise his freaking madness.